I don't think there are any. At one time, I thought that there were, simply based upon documents that I'd seen while I was attached to the intelligence briefing team, Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet. At that time, and even for many years afterwards, I did not believe that the government would use me in that way. I had devoted my whole life to government service. I had been in the Air Force, I was in the Navy, I was a river patrol boat captain in Vietnam. I had proved myself. I had combat ribbons with the V for Valor. There was no doubt of my loyalty to my country. And maybe that's why it was so easy to use me, because I wouldn't doubt that what I saw was real. But over the years, I've done a lot of research. What I've discovered is there's no proof existing anywhere that extraterrestrials are real, or that have ever visited this planet, or that they exist anywhere in the universe. There is not one shred of evidence anywhere. There is lots of evidence, tons of it in fact, that there are a group of people collectively known as the Illuminati who want us to believe in some extraterrestrial threat from space so that they can cause a world government, bringing together of all the people to resist that external threat.
We only need gaze back from Vietnam to today to see the extent to which these false flag operations, hoaxed events, exaggerated threats can stampede a populace and the Congress and the presidency into very dangerous and bad decisions. Now, the mother lode, the sort of the crown jewel of that kind of event is what has been planned assiduously since the 1950s, and that is a threat from outer space that is alien, that would unite the world around a military junta, a militarism, that would put all of humanity together, but against one or more extraterrestrial races. Now that plan, which they came up with in the 1950s, has been very carefully rolled out. I mean, this is, if you were to rank this on a scale of 1 to 10 of sensitive, compartmented intelligence, information, this is as high as it goes, 10. Now, I've had it confirmed, and it's going to be in our movie Unacknowledged. One of the people that's going to be in this movie is an Air Force Office of Special Investigations counterintelligence officer who confirms the false flag. Name, rank, serial number. Confirms the military's involvement in staging the abductions of humans, making it look alien. Confirms that he carried bags of cash to people in the mainstream media to influence stories and coverage of this issue. They have been wanting a certain acculturation around UFOs and ETs for the purpose of having the public think that it could be true, but they don't really know what it is. So right now, more than half the public, over this longitudinal, long-term psychological propaganda warfare program launched in the 50s, believe UFOs are real. They believe there's intelligent life in the universe. But that's about where the granular knowledge ends. There's not a lot of granular knowledge, detailed knowledge of what all this is. There's another category, and this is more difficult to understand, and that is electromagnetic assets. And these include electromagnetic systems that could optically, like a very advanced hologram, simulate an event. Electromagnetic systems that have been called popularly electronic warfare systems that are psychotronic and radionic, that interface with consciousness and thought. And electromagnetic systems that can affect large segments of the population when targeted. Now, these began to be developed quite in an advanced fashion by the 40s and 50s. And by 1956, it had been accomplished to the point of state-of-the-art.
And the first time that I saw any reference to that, I was reading some papers from the Carnegie Endowment Fund, and there was a record of a speech. Well, it was a dinner for Viscount Ishii, who Japanese delegation, the Japanese imperial delegation, in 1917. And John Dewey was one of the speakers. And the first sentence out of his mouth as I was reading this, I almost fell out of my chair, because this was in 1917. And he said the best way to cause all the people of the world to come together in one world government and end war forever would be if we were attacked by some other species from some other planet. And boy, that just clicked with me, and I knew that that this is just another scam. This is the age of deception. There's no doubt about it. And then 8 times during Reagan's administration, he inserted almost the exact same phrase into 8 of his speeches.
I couldn't help at one point in my discussions privately with General Secretary Gorbachev, when you stop to think that we're all God's children wherever we may live in the world, I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet, outside in the universe. We'd forget all the little local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together. Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us, but I think that between us we can bring about that realization. In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war? I think maybe I'd answer it this way. I keep, in my frustration sometimes, you know, actually, if you count some of the things going on in smaller countries and all, there have been about 114 wars since World War II. But I've often wondered, what if all of us in the world discovered that we were threatened by a power from outer space, from another planet? Wouldn't we all of a sudden find that we didn't have any differences between us at all? We were all human beings, citizens of the world, and wouldn't we come together to fight that particular threat?
And it's a scam. That's what I can tell you. What they call UFOs, these craft that fly around the sky, are real, but they're not piloted by some little green guy from some other planet. They're owned and operated by the United States of America for one, the Soviet Union for another, probably Great Britain, Canada. I think the first really operable ones were probably manufactured in Western Canada, in the wilderness, in a place especially built to create those machines, like we created the Manhattan Project, and the same kind of secrecy surrounded it. So the technology is real. It's been kept secret, and it's been used to promote this concept that there's an alien threat to this earth. The cattle mutilations I've discovered in my research are nothing more than what's left after the government does its secret tests on the low-level radiation leakage from its atomic weapons assembly plants and atomic power plants. It's a low-level radiation monitoring project. And if you look at what's missing in the cattle, you'll see that it's just as clear as day. They take the lips, they take the tongue, they take a 6-inch patch of skin, they core out the rectum, the colon area, where those kinds of things would collect. They pass through the digestive system. On female cows, they take the udder to check for low-level radiation in the milk. This is being passed to the calves. And these are all grazing animals that graze on the grass where the radiation falls when it falls from the air.
It's not quite up there with the 1947 Roswell incident, but the cow mutilations of the 70s remain one of New Mexico's biggest mysteries. Now there's a new book about it, and the author says he knows exactly what happened to all those cows. News 13's Amanda Goodman has the story. Amanda?
Jess, the book was written by the son of the lead New Mexico State Police investigator. A warning, some of the images are graphic.
A lot of the cattle were found with broken bones. They were found with harness marks because they were being lifted in some type of harness or clamp marks on their hooves or legs.
That was life for ranchers in northern New Mexico in the mid to late 1970s. Cows were turning up dead, their carcasses mutilated, and no one knew why.
People need to know what really happened, and hopefully this book will set the record straight.
Greg Valdez is the author of Dulce Base, a new book about the cow mutilations. His dad, Gabe Valdez, was the lead investigator on the case for state police back in the 70s. The book is made up of his old case files.
The evidence in the book will show that humans were involved in the mutilations.
Officer Valdez's theory that government agencies were snatching the cattle for super secret Cold War experiments at an underground base in Dulce.
Ranchers would routinely see them at night, before they went to bed, and then the next morning they would find them dead in the field or the pasture.
Officer Valdez believed these government agencies returned the cattle to perpetuate the theory that aliens were responsible, to shield themselves from suspicion.
The more people look in the wrong direction and towards aliens and stuff that's not supported by evidence, no one will ever be held accountable, and it will just be a mystery.
It's a move Valdez's son says has worked for the last 4 decades, and something he hopes the book will put an end to.
Someone should be held accountable.
Some of the other theories about what happened to the cattle included alien abductions, that the cows simply died of natural causes, and predators were responsible for the mutilation. Valdez says all evidence suggests humans were the ones responsible. Jess?
Okay, Amanda, Gabe Valdez died 2 years ago. His son says he doesn't think the government will ever own up to what really happened.
And it's just an incredible deception. And I'm just amazed that people have fallen for it in the manner that they have in the absence of any proof whatsoever. I mean, they cite hearsay as proof.
Well, what about all of the alien abductions?
They're not abductions, they're the results of a tremendously successful and very sophisticated mind control operation, all of which has been in development. Well, they started working on those kinds of things since before World War II, but they have perfected them. On my website, I have a patent of a machine that can read your brainwaves, can recombine them in a computer and send them back to you, and make you think things happened that never happened. I mean, you can't get a patent for something like that unless it really works. You have to prove it to the patent office. It works, a patent was issued. And this is just one of the things that snuck by them that hasn't, because when people invent things like this, they're sucked up by the government immediately, and then they're put behind the veil of national security and classified, and then nobody knows about them. But every once in a while, something sneaks by them. And when you do these searches in the patent office, and the trademark office, and in the copyright office, you come up with some real gems once in a while, and that was one.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads. And those voices are being transmitted by microwave or other methods.
Well, several viewers asked us to investigate what they call electronic harassment. KMIR 6's Angela Monroe joins us now with what she's discovered. Angela.
Electronic harassment, synthetic telepathy, voice-to-skull technology. Chances are you haven't heard of these terms, but after searching the internet, I found dozens of websites dedicated to the phenomenon and several Valley residents who say they're victims.
How much more can you invade me than to go into my brain?
It sounds like somebody else is reading the book, only it's thoughts.
We're not having a group hallucination. This is actually something that's happening.
These men all live in the area, didn't know each other before the voices started, and say someone is playing mind games with them.
Mostly it's a lot of derogatory comments about whatever you're thinking about.
Only time I ever had a whole sentence, he said, "This is not about you." which just frosted me. If it's not about me, what the hell am I going through all this for?
Kevin Bond says he used to have a normal life.
I was living in the San Diego area, was clerking for a federal judge, and I noticed that I was being followed by a whole bunch of people.
According to the websites, what Bond is describing is called gang stalking. He moved to Palm Springs to escape.
I started hearing, as you'll hear, hearing voices and what they'll call voice to skull or microwave hearing.
Bob Stansfield says his experience was similar and started a decade ago.
They were active in following me around here, and I started hearing the voices a little bit after the vehicular stalking.
Randall Ringer says the voices started when he was undergoing chemotherapy.
The first thing that was said was, Randall Ringer. And I sat up straight and I went into the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, looked myself in the eyes, and I said, did that really happen?
Bond says he's found more than 300 victims locally and is tracking others across the state through billboards. In Johnson Valley, a Freedom House just opened to help people who believe they are being targeted.
To many of you who find yourselves the object of covert harassment, that there is hope and that you are not alone, and that we are striving to find legislation and we're working towards freedom for all.
Derek Robinson leads a national group called Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance. He says he knows who's playing mind games.
Rogue government officials that are sponsoring this, also corrupt business officials, and private citizens.
And he also told us how.
Most of it is delivered by microwave, and I believe it's satellite delivered, whether someone is on a remote location using a laptop or next door using the desktop.
Bond says neurotransmitter chips that run off body electricity have been inserted into some people.
And they assign cell phone numbers to them. The cell phone numbers are then run through a computer, and a computer translates your thoughts. This crime has been available to the military for 60 years.
We sat down with local psychiatrist Dr. Alan Drucker to get his professional opinion.
There's no scientific evidence and there's no objective evidence to show that what they believe to be happening is factually true.
So what does the doctor believe is behind these voices?
Information that I found on many of these websites really confirms or is consistent with what I see in delusional disorders.
But these men disagree.
I've been to a psychiatrist and they gave me anti-schizophrenia medication and it did absolutely nothing whatsoever.
However, Dr. Drucker says delusional disorder has no real medical treatment and is believed to start because of disrupted dopamine pathways in the brain.
These pathways then start to fire or get triggered in the absence of actual stimulation of a person actually speaking or the radio being on, etc.
Dr. Drucker says dopamine can be disrupted for a variety of reasons: a genetic predisposition, illicit drugs, and even chemotherapy. These men have their own theories why they're being harassed.
I think that I was targeted because I'm gay.
I reported someone for selling what I thought they were selling drugs, and they were.
Nationwide, this crime is committed about 60% against white women ages from 30 to 38. But in Palm Springs, it's almost 98% gay men.
It does tend to occur more in populations of individuals who are marginalized or in some way stigmatized in society.
But these men disagree and say police and the psychiatric community need to take them seriously.
When I worked with the government, I heard a lot of people coming in saying, I'm hearing voices through my tooth. Now I look back and I think, are they like I am now and I just didn't pay attention?
For them, the voices are a waking nightmare.
Also, the congressional investigations into the intelligence community has revealed the existence of these programs. There's no secret about it. It's documented. Project Artichoke, Project MK Ultra, MK Naomi. I could go on and on and on all day long. And if you had the time in your movie, we could lay out all the documentation, which is official government documentation, and prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that it's true.
Well, there was a large series of Senate hearings in the mid to late 70s, and then a whole round of declassification of documents. And basically not much of anything's been declassified since then. So we learned that The CIA was formed in 1947. Its first documented mind control program began in April 1950, which was called Bluebird, which was 3 months before the start of the Korean War. And the disinformation about that was that the mind control programs were all reactive to what the communist Chinese were doing during the Korean War, but clearly not true. And then there was just a series of projects. So Bluebird became Artichoke, which became MK Ultra, which became MK Search, which runs up to 1973. And then there was parallel programs, MK Naomi and a bunch of others. And they involved all kinds of different experiments, some of which sound like science fiction. Contracts with many of the major universities, with investigators cleared at top secret and knowing it was CIA money. Well, one of the experiments was done at Ionia State Hospital. This is MK Ultra, which is in Michigan. And all the psychiatrists involved who were cleared at top secret were former military doctors. And basically the experiment was they take incarcerated sex offenders who are in a mental hospital. They interrogate them using various kinds of drugs, marijuana, amphetamines, alcohol, and so on. And what they're trying to do is extract information from them about crimes they've committed for which they've never been charged. So the whole idea then being, well, if we can draw some information out of these guys, maybe when we're interrogating foreign agents, we can do the same. And there was a team called the Artichoke team, which did interrogations in safe houses on, they didn't say exactly who it was, but it was actual people of interest, foreign agents and so on. And the Artichoke team used the Artichoke method, which included IV drugs, alcohol, good cop, bad cop, sensory deprivation, sensory isolation, all these techniques that were studied under this series of programs. Let's see, this is now, we're in the late 50s into early 60s. In MK Ultra, a program that was called Operation Midnight Climax, which is extremely thoroughly documented. People who were former agents of what was the Bureau of Narcotics, which is now the DEA, basically built safe houses and built in those safe houses what looked like a brothel setup. And when you look at the requisitions, it's like satin sheets and all kinds of things to hang on the wall. And the guys running the program hired prostitutes to go out and pick up guys at bars, bring them back to the safe house, have sex with them, dose them with LSD without their knowledge, and the CIA guys would watch through a one-way mirror. So if that wasn't documented, you would just think somebody made that up.
But that's what it is. It's not extraterrestrials coming down. The human body cannot pass through walls or roofs, or through windows that are closed. You know, this is all the product of the imagination and people's willingness to believe something because they want it to be true. I don't know why they would want it to be true. You see, because if it were true, these are not friendly aliens. They're doing some terrible things to people. If I were to kidnap somebody, pass them up through the roof, take them somewhere, and perform operations on them, and take samples of semen and ova from their, reproductive organs, and plant thoughts in their mind, and all this kind of stuff, and then bring them back, guess where I'd be right now? In prison. It's kidnapping. It's criminal. It's a terrible thing. So there's a morbid sense about all this too, as if people want to be hurt for some reason. I don't understand that. That certainly is something that somebody needs to look at. Why do people feel that this needs to be real? What in them says I want to be abducted and abused and kidnapped and raped and all of this stuff against my will? Because they seem to take some kind of satisfaction that this is happening.
Stories of UFO sightings and alien abductions date back centuries. And unless President Trump declassifies the Area 51 files, rumors of aliens and the men in black who protect us will always remain. But my next guest says the rumors are true because he says He was abducted by aliens 45 years ago. Calvin Parker joins me now. All right, so Calvin, just so I understand this and we'll make it easy for the audience to understand, claim you were abducted when you were with a friend 45 years ago, and now that your friend has unfortunately passed away, you feel comfortable sharing it because he didn't want to really go too public with it. But let's start from the beginning. You were walking where and what happened?
We were fishing. We actually got off work in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and was fishing at the old Shaw Peters shipyard, and that's where something come in from behind us, and I'm not for sure if it was aliens or what it was, but I'm just assuming it was. And they landed behind us, and 3 of them got out and took, 2 of them got a hold of Charlie, and 1 got a hold of myself.
Okay,
and
1
took us
second.
aboard.
Okay. So when they were coming down, what were they in? Were they in some sort of spacecraft?
Well, no, I was facing the river, and we just seen some lights behind us. So when we turned around, the light got so bright, and they was already there. We didn't even hear them land. They was probably the length of a football field behind us.
So what did they look like when they came into your line of vision?
Well, they had kind of gray wrinkled skin like a elephant or a manatee or something. And then when we got on board, one looked a little, you know, a little more like a human than an elephant like that, but kind of female-looking creature.
Okay, so maybe a female alien. And then what did they do to you when they took you up in space or wherever they took you?
Well, when I was aboard the ship, the female reached and run her finger down my throat and tried to mess with my nasal cavity, looked in my nose, and there was something that come out of the ceiling, and it just clicked about 4 times, and I figured it was like an X-ray or something, whatever they use. And it went back up in the ceiling. Then she summons the old Big Ugly when it come got me, and he took me back outside and set me down at the river.
Okay. Were you terrified? How did you feel when you were being, I wouldn't, maybe probed is the wrong word, but examined by the female alien?
I was scared. I was naturally afraid, and I think they give us an ejection, though, of some kind when they got us, and that's what we assumed when we got to the hospital the next day. Then they took us to Keesler to check us for radiation.
And you say you passed a polygraph test, is that true?
I did a polygraph, a voice stress test.
Wow.
There was eyewitnesses to this account.
Wow. I mean, Dr. Ford from the top of the show also passed a polygraph. So I don't know what to make of that. All right, listen, Calvin, I appreciate you coming on and telling us your story. And I wish you the best of luck in life. It sounds like you're doing just fine. And, you know, if they ever come get you again, tell them to come visit Waters World, all right? I'm ready to receive them.
You know, if anybody has a doubt about the credibility of the story, they'll read the book, Pascagoula, The Closest Encounter, My Story, Calvin Parker. It's documented in there. Every little thing in that book is documented.
All right. Well, Calvin, I'm glad you came onto Waters World, and thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
And nobody's talking about the fact that this is a terrible thing to happen. If I were to do that to you, you wouldn't be too happy, would you? But somehow it's okay if an alien does it? I don't think so. It's all bullshit. It's a lie.